With Warzone being a competitive multiplayer game, most of its content comes from the gameplay itself. Clips of cool kills, discussion about loadouts and weapon meta, or even someone hacking their way to a win for the millionth time. But with that said, it's easy to overlook the fact that Warzone does actually have a story. It may be hidden underneath cryptic cutscenes and in-game events and Easter eggs, but it's there nonetheless. So, with the release of a new map imminent and our days in Verdansk numbered, I think it's time to revisit the clues and piece together the story of Warzone once and for all. It's time to take a look inside the Red Door. If you've played the Cold War campaign, you'll recognize the infamous Red Door from the missions Fracture Jaw and Break On Through. But what exactly is the Red Door? Well, to be 100% accurate, it's nothing. The Red Door doesn't actually exist. In fact, the Red Door is only present inside the mind of Bell while under the effects of the CIA's experimental memory implantation program. The door serves as a sort of physical manifestation of Bell's hidden memories. The location of Perseus and the truth of Bell's identity are both hidden away behind the Red Door. But then, just what is the Red Door doing in Warzone? As I'm sure you're aware, the Red Door has behaved a bit differently from season to season, but its basic purpose has stayed the same. Players that are able to locate a Red Door and step inside are transported to a different location on the map, one of many locked rooms that are otherwise inaccessible. Within these rooms are several boxes containing high-tier loot, weapons, and money, everything that one could need to fund the rest of their Warzone game. But again, I ask, why are the doors here in the first place? It's been well over 4 months since the doors were first added in Warzone, and we've yet to receive an answer. That is, until now. But in order to understand the truth behind the doors, we have to look at the entire storyline of Warzone, starting all the way back in March of 2020, well before the release of Cold War. Back in the early days of Warzone, before the release of Cold War, the story itself was pretty cut and dry. For the most part, it continued the story from Modern Warfare 2019's campaign, as well as the Spec Ops missions. This is all set up in the final cutscene from the campaign, a meeting between Captain Price and CIA agent Kate Laswell. The two discuss a new threat, Viktor Zakhaev, a Russian arms dealer now allied with the remains of Al-Qatala, the Urzikstan extremist group from the Modern Warfare campaign. On March 3, 2020, Zakhaev and Al-Qatala launch a full-scale invasion of the city of Verdansk. In the aftermath of this assault, the inhabitants of Verdansk were all either killed or evacuated, turning the city into the fractured ghost town that we see in Warzone. To counter this attack, Operation Armistice was formed, a joint operation between Coalition and Allegiance forces, the two opposing sides from Modern Warfare's multiplayer mode. However, shortly after the deployment of Armistice fighters within Verdansk, a surprise Al-Qatala gas attack trapped the operators within the city, forcing them to fight against each other to secure extraction and forming the very scenario that we see played out in each and every Warzone game. Eventually, Viktor Zakhaev was killed at the hands of Captain Price, but peace had not yet come to Verdansk. Shortly after Zakhaev's death, the city was overrun by hordes of zombies released from an abandoned cargo ship that crashed on the southeastern coast. After Armistice operators failed to contain the threat, a nuclear strike was ordered on the city in an attempt to eradicate the zombie infestation. After the aforementioned nuclear strike, we traveled back in time, landing in the year 1984. Immediately after the nuke dropped, we were greeted with a cutscene that seemingly rewound time back to 1984, culminating in the camera moving through, you guessed it, a red door. Before the door is a trail of blood, and in the background we hear the voice say the line, "You have no idea what's coming." This voice would turn out to be Stitch, a new Warzone operator and Perseus agent who would go on to serve as the main antagonist throughout 1984 Verdansk's main story. Stitch begins his master plan by first kidnapping CIA agent and operative Russell Adler, a key character from the Black Ops Cold War campaign. While it's not immediately clear what Stitch wants from Adler, we quickly learn that he plans to torture and interrogate him for information. Information that he does eventually get after Adler finally breaks. The next major plot development comes as Stitch dispatches a strike team of Perseus operatives to Mount Yamantau, a name that should be familiar to fans of both Black Ops Cold War as well as the original Black Ops title. Once again, it's here that our story takes yet another turn, this time going all the way back to the plot of the original Call of Duty Black Ops. The story here follows Alex Mason, a CIA operative who also plays a major role in the story of Black Ops Cold War. After a botched operation during the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, Mason is captured by General Nikito Dragovich, along with Lev Kravchenko and Dr. Frederick Steiner. Subject to their experiments, Mason is brainwashed and turned into a Soviet sleeper agent with express orders to assassinate President John F. Kennedy. Throughout his time in captivity, and even after, Mason witnesses multiple hallucinations as he tries to fight the programming within his mind. However, Mason manages to resist the brainwashing and escape capture, eventually returning to work for the CIA. It's here that we start to see a lot of shocking similarities between Black Ops 1, Cold War, and the Verdansk 1984 storyline. The most obvious of these being the numbers. In Black Ops 1, the numbers serve as a means of control over the Soviet sleeper agents. The numbers contain hidden messages that only the sleeper agents are programmed to understand and through which they receive their orders. Mason continues to see the numbers inside his head throughout practically every title he's been in, including Cold War. These numbers are also present within Warzone every time you enter a red door. It's also safe to assume that the brainwashing procedure that Mason undergoes is the same procedure that Bell is subject to in Cold War. First, there's the obvious connection of the way that these experiments are being used. In Black Ops 1, we see Mason, a CIA operative, transformed into a Soviet assassin, whereas in Cold War the opposite is true, and we see Bell, a former KGB operative, transformed into a CIA asset. But that's not where the similarities end. In fact, if we look at the lab facilities that we see Mason held in Black Ops 1, we can see that they are nearly identical to those used on Bell during the mission Break On Through in Cold War. Now we can return back to the story of 1984, where Stitch and Perseus's master plan has finally been revealed. Stitch's team was sent to Mount Yamantau to retrieve the remaining data from Dragovich's brainwashing project back in the 60s, the same brainwashing project that was used on Alex Mason, the same brainwashing project that was repurposed for use on Bell during the Cold War campaign, and the same brainwashing project that brought about the Red Doors in the first place. Perseus's plan is to weaponize the brainwashing technology on a grand scale, and to do what Dragovich only managed with a single subject to entire nations. We saw the beginnings of this plan implemented at the start of Season 5, during the cutscene that introduced us to the newest operator, Kitsune. During the cutscene, Kitsune is seen within the Echelon Broadcasting Station, uploading something with the file name Dragovich. Woods and Stryker infiltrate to try and stop the upload, but they arrive just moments too late. The program is activated and Woods and Stryker's entire strike team turns against them, allowing Kitsune to escape. Finally, we see Stitch activating multiple radio towers throughout Verdansk, broadcasting the signal throughout the entire city. Now, with the full story of Warzone fleshed out up until the present, everything seems pretty cut and dry. but there's still a few things that don't make sense. For one, 1984 Verdansk should not be a barren warzone filled with toxic gas. In fact, we know from the story of modern warfare that Verdansk doesn't become abandoned until 2020, 36 years after the time of the current map. You don't need to be a mathematician to realize that that doesn't add up. Also, why are the red doors and numbers present within Verdansk in the first place? After all, the only times those two things have ever been seen are by the victims of Dragovich's brainwashing experiments. The answer is painfully simple and has been right in front of our noses the entire time. Each and every player within Verdansk is a brainwashed sleeper agent under the control of Stitch and Perseus. Each and every symptom of brainwashing that we have seen is exhibited by the player themselves. Red doors? Check. The player sees them all over Verdansk. Red numbers? Check. The player sees them every time they enter a red door. Hearing voices? Check. Every time the player enters a red door, Stitch's voice is heard in their mind. You will not get out of here. Much like Adler's voice is heard in Bell's during the Vietnam flashbacks. Hallucinations? Check. Teleporting halfway across the map by walking through a door seems like a hallucination to me, and this would also explain the inconsistencies with the timeline of Verdansk if what we perceive to be 1984 Verdansk is not actually real at all. And if that's not enough, every game even starts with the words Operation Flashback in the bottom left-hand corner. There's only one other time we have seen a flashback like this, the fake Vietnam memory missions that Bell experiences in Cold War, which are, again, direct results of the brainwashing experiments. Even the Gulag itself bears striking resemblance to the restraints and screens that both Mason and Bell are subject to. But here's the final nail in the coffin. The cutscene that plays once you are killed in-game has never made much sense. How exactly does the player end up a prisoner of war if they were just killed on the battlefield? That is, until you consider that this isn't happening after the player dies in Verdansk. Instead, this is the player being taken prisoner before ever being subjected to the brainwashing experiment. And just like Bell is reset to the beginning of his fabricated memories every time he dies in Vietnam, the player is reset again and again and again, fighting every time in the same war zone with no end in sight. Everything that happens in Verdansk 1984 is a fabrication, guided by Stitch to keep Perseus's sleeper agents subdued and occupied, running the same mission, a desperate battle to secure extraction from the toxic gas, over and over and over until they are needed and eventually activated. And with Season 5 Reloaded releasing this Tuesday the 21st, along with a new in-game event, The Numbers, that activation might happen sooner than we think. That's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I had a ton of fun putting together this video. I'm planning to do more content like this in the future, releasing lore updates every time Warzone is updated and the story is advanced further. So be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss that. But anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next video.